So this is our first, benefits investment, benefits meeting where we've split out the benefits part from the investment part. So we don't have to approve the minutes because we approved those yesterday because they were all together. And next time we will have the minutes separated out. So that'll be the first thing we do in our next meeting, which will be 3 months from now. So because this is new and different, does anyone have any questions before we get started? Okay. All right. Well, we're going to start with our manager benefits, Brandon Chambers. He's been working on some changes to our leave plan policies, and I'll just have him jump right into that. And, the committee here, I want the committee to ask questions and to either, be on board or not, and then we can make a recommendation or not make a recommendation. So go ahead.
So I've emailed each of you this packet of information. You also have the hard copies in front of you. So the first one that says Utah County policies, we're going to go over 3 of the policies, one being leave, one being FMLA, and one being group insurance plans, all sort of related to leave and proposed changes. To let you know how we got here, we initially set up a focus group with multiple Utah County employees to go through roughly about it was about 30 opportunities for changes to our policies in this area. We discussed kind of what their opinion was, what they felt the direction that we should be going in with these leave policies. From that, we met internally with HR leadership to kind of go through and see which options would be definitely viable and move forward. The next step was we met with Deneen over in the finance department to go through their assessment, and Deneen provided a thorough audit, financial audit of a lot of these changes and what impacts they would make. And from that, we've been able to get it down to this list of what is 12 policy changes through three of our policies. So we'll start with the first one, which is actually a significant change. So bullet point number 1 is the vacation additional pay conversion. And in the red line, you'll see under the leave policy 550, it's under page, just so we are all staying in the same place. Let's see, so it would be, there it is. So listed under page 3, under the vacation portion of the policy, which vacation leave is, just to make sure everybody's, so we're at 500 section B, and then we're moving down to B10. And it says annual vacation leave conversion. So I'll start explaining what the reason for this is. Utah County has a significant portion of their employees that have leave well into the 300-hour plus range and struggle to find time to take vacation and end up forfeiting time back to the county. So we looked at different mechanisms for helping the employee take vacation leave and also be able to get some financial reimbursement for leave rather than forfeit it back to the county. And we tried to find it where it was something that was a positive for all areas, financial, Utah County administration, and for the employee itself. So one of the proposed mechanism is to allow this additional pay conversion. And the policy, as you see, goes under option A. So it's only for employees that accrue vacation time. And they basically, as you see, it goes through points 1 through 5. It can be made only in conjunction with the actual vacation time taken off. So what does that mean? The employee has to take vacation time in order to use this additional pay component. They have to request it a pay period before. It has to be approved in advance by the department head. If the department head says no, we can't fund this additional pay component, that's up to the department head. It will only be granted up to 80 hours, and that's only if the employee takes off up to 80 hours of vacation time. And they have a minimum of taking off at least 40 hours to get this. So what it is if you take anywhere from 40 to 80 hours off consecutively, they can request an equal additional pay component to draw down their vacation of 40 to 80 hours, whatever they took. So as you see in the example there, the employee had 250 hours. They requested 2 weeks of vacation off. They can also request this additional 2 weeks of additional vacation pay of 80 hours. And in the end, the end result would be they would have 90 hours in the end. They would use 160 hours drawdown of their vacation. So it's a mechanism that encourages the employee to use vacation, gives them the opportunity to draw vacation down without forfeiting it. And from the financial perspective, the county looks at it as what's more valuable, vacation time in the future being used or vacation time now? Well, they're anticipating that that value of vacation is going to increase by the next year, so they would rather it be utilized now rather than banked and saved for a more expensive later date. So in a way, it kind of incentivizes, as I said, administration, finance, and the employee to utilize vacation and get more value for that. So that's the first policy change that we've put in here. So do you want us to go through each one? Do you want us to talk about them?
I think this one we should, stop and talk because it's a little, it's obviously, it would be a, significant change. First of all, does anyone have any questions? I want to make sure I'm looking at the right one. Is it the one with the notes or the one with the not?
So at the top, it should say the policy should be leave 5-500. There should be 3 separate ones unless you grabbed a couple.
Okay, got it. Okay.
And then it's going to be under the vacation section,
Page
point
3.
10. Correct.
Okay, got it. Okay. So I understand this. I'm curious if other members of the committee understand.
I have a couple questions, if I could. So my reading of what's drafted here on the bottom of page 3 of 13 and the top of page 4 of 13 says that you have to result in at least 240 hours of vacation left.
Where do
So
we see that?
That's on the top of page 4.
Let me take a look. There might be an
So
oversight.
in your example, if you have 250 hours of vacation, you would not be able to draw it down to 160. You'd be able to only draw it down to 240.
Okay, I don't see that.
That is correct, how it's written.
And so I would assume that, and I didn't see anything here reference the 40 hours or the 80 hours max, the 40 hours minimum. And I don't see how you'd ever have an 80 hours max. I guess you could, if you have more than 300 hours and you're about ready to lose them, you have 320 hours, you could take 80 hours and convert them to 75% payout. But there is a 240 floor that's written in here right now.
Can I take a look at what you're seeing? Just
I think we might have a different version, Brandon.
That's what we're all looking at.
I printed out the one that he sent to me. so I can see if it's the same.
That is not the right one. I don't know why that's. Let me see if I can pull it up on the screen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you could share it on the screen, that'd be even better. Yeah.
It should be this one here. Let me make.
While,
I think it's in here, Brad. If you turn to page 8, I think it's on 7 and 8. Page 7 and 8. I think it's page 8 is where the example is.
Interesting that it's kind of didn't come through cleanly, I guess, on the email. Let me. Yeah.
yeah, that's not,
Sleep without pay.
yeah, that's not it.
PJ, if there's a way that I can share that, I apologize for that.
So let me ask my second question while he's pulling that up, because I think the answer to that second question may come from Jeremy. So my understanding, you're talking about having to get approval from the department head. My understanding is the GASB laws require the county to have all of our vacation accounted for in our budget for every employee, vacation and sick leave. So maybe Jeremy can answer the question. Would, in fact, if we're going to convert to a cash payout, that money should already be in the budget. May not be in that department's budget, but it should be in the budget because of the GASB laws. Jeremy, can you clarify that? Is that true? Is the money in the budget for our vacation and sick leave as it is now, whatever accruals and balances we have, or not?
No, it's a good question. So this is the funnest part of explaining accounting is the balance sheet. So accrued vacation is a balance sheet question. So we expense the leave when it's earned. So as I cut payroll, I'm expensing that benefit account for the budget. So if I work the whole year, I'm going to earn that, and it's going to get banked at the end of the year onto the balance sheet. So when I get paid out, I get paid out of the balance sheet, not out of the budget.
So you're saying the money is not reflected. So if I have 340 hours of vacation, that money is not currently reflected in the budget anywhere.
Well, we reflect in the budget what's going to be earned. So if you use 0 sick or vacation leave, we still expense it throughout the year as you earn it. So you earn it and we expense it, but you get paid out as you use it. That doesn't affect the budget. So when you use it, that's maybe the best way to say it. When you use it, it doesn't affect the budget. So if you were to get paid out the full amount, it wouldn't matter what the budget is.
Okay, so to help understand then, so if I'm converting 75%, let's assume 50 hours at 75%, and want to do that conversion on my birthday week or whatever it is, birthday pay period, that money is not reflected in the budget, so we would have to find that money. Is that fair to say?
No, so at the end of each year, part of the year-end closeout, and this is on our financial report, we have to book a liability for all the unused leave.
Yeah.
And that's on our balance sheet.
So help me understand then, 'cause that's what I was getting to. If it's on our balance sheet, does it mean it's in our budget?
Nope. Balance sheet has nothing to do with budget. It's assets
that's
and
my clarification.
liabilities.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So we would have to find the money.
No, we have the money set aside for extra payouts. So here's an example. So I claim a full 80 hours of leave. So I accrue that as I take it. So at the end of that pay period, I didn't work, right? I didn't work at all, but I still earned that paycheck. And I earned an accrual of, 6 hours per paycheck, whatever it is. So that's what's in the budget is I expense the wages in the current period. This is the best example. So this is more like when someone retires. When someone retires, they get 100% of unused vacation pay in addition to what they actually got paid as their current year wages. And that's where we hit the balance sheet, is on that paying out whatever they had earned, but we hadn't paid them yet. That comes out of that liability account.
Okay. So you have an account set up for that liability that
Yes.
becomes due and paying when it's actually being utilized. Like, for example, the 75% of the 80 hours you just referenced as an example. When that
So if I'm getting
request is
paid my normal wage for 80 hours, nothing changes.
true.
I have my bank of what I've earned each period and what I've used each period, and that number just floats all year long. And then at the end of the year, I draw a line in the sand on December 31st, and I calculate the unused but earned hours based on that person's current rate times all the employees. That's my liability.
All right. So let me maybe ask it a little bit differently, and I don't want to belabor the point because I know we have much to talk about. But if I use the example that you used, and I'm already earning my normal pay, but it's my birthday pay period, and so I want to convert vacation, 80 hours worth of vacation to 75% of my wage. Where is that money going to come from?
We're going to reduce the liability by that amount. So your normal paycheck will just come out of the normal budget, but then that excess won't come out of the budget. We'll go and hit the balance sheet for that excess amount because we've already accrued that as a liability. So we'll just reduce the liability by that amount. And that actually, if we do it at a 75% rate, the county keeps that extra 25%.
Correct. That's correct.
So for what we're proposing, it's a 100%. There's no reduction of
Oh, okay.
payout. I
Don't-
mean,
do
but
not-
there is a floor. They have to have 80 hours remaining in all circumstances.
Okay, I've not seen that version.
And it's, yeah, so that's what's on the screen right now. I don't know how it got blipped off the print, but this is kind of how the
The
policy.
bottom line is this will not impact the budget. This change will not impact the budget. It'll impact the rate at which we recognize the liability at the end of the year. And I think that will only make that number go down faster.
Well, and that gets me to my point then, because the original question was, do we really need the department head's approval if it's not going to impact the budget? Because if it's between you and the employee and HR and turning the document in your birthday pay period, then it doesn't impact the department. I'm not sure you need the county attorney or Eric Edwards or whoever is your department head to approve any of this conversion.
Yeah, I agree with you, because if someone was terminated, we don't ask the department head's permission to pay them out their accrued leave. We just pay it out.
I didn't ask permission.
Well, I think that'd actually be good if it was just an HR approval to put it into payroll. So I think we could probably eliminate that step just based upon this explanation. That's actually very helpful to understand, Jeremy. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jeremy.
So similar to how we do maybe sick conversion, which is just a request to HR, we could do this as the same if if we can bypass going through the department head. So now that we kind of see the program here, just to make sure you understand, an employee must always have a minimum of 80 hours of vacation after conversion. They can only be paid out an additional up to 80 hours, but it's vacation hour for vacation hour they use. They have to at least use 40 consecutive hours of vacation to get this additional 40, and they can go up to 80, but it has to be consecutive. And it's not one time a year, and it's not right before your birthday. They could do it a couple times during the year if they really wanted to.
I'm just curious if everyone understands why we want to link it to the utilization of vacation.
No.
I would love to hear that explanation.
And this is definitely up for debate. The reason why, and this came through the focus group and through the evaluation of what was being looked at, is that our employees do not use vacation. And there's a concern about the mental health of our employees, quite frankly. And so we're afraid that if we just put in a sellback feature, that's all they would do, that they would not take vacation. That's the reason why it's in there. So I'm definitely open to countering opinions, but my opinion is that's a serious problem at Utah County. And I would feel very uncomfortable about employees who consistently are selling back vacation so they don't have to use vacation, and they're not going to lose vacation, so they have no incentive at all to use vacation. Does that make sense? Again, I'm open to countering ideas. Just to, I have just to tell you where this came from. This actually came from Wasatch Behavioral. That's how they do it there, and that's it's exactly the same reason why they do it that way. Of course, they are a mental health facility. So anyway, thoughts?
I'll just say I like the mental health component of it. I will say, and I think those in here would probably agree, we've historically been understaffed. And so part of the reason why we may not use as much vacation is because when I come back in the office from taking a vacation, or even while I'm on vacation, I'm getting, commissioners calling. I've got multiple projects. I'm pulling 12-hour days after I get back in the office. And that's why I have a giant amount of vacation accrued, even though I've been on 15 days of vacation in the last 3 months. But I haven't hardly used any that much.
Yeah, I fully agree with that, and I see that as well. Of course, we all know when we go on vacation, we're not necessarily on vacation either. But at least in this scenario, that you give, you could have theoretically, sold back, 120 hours of vacation as well. So, I understand all these, competing issues. I guess we just need to figure out what is the middle ground, what is going to be best for the employee and the county. There is a high demand for this feature. In other words, employees very much want to have the ability to get, cash for vacation. There's no doubt about that. Again, I'm extremely uncomfortable about just offering that as a standalone feature because of the reasons that I've explained. And we do have employees who lose time every single year, a fair amount actually. So
I was just going to mention, I think this creates instead of a disincentive either way, I think it's a dual incentive for those that want it, and it encourages the needed vacation at the same time. So I understand what Rob's saying too, that and we all come back to more work afterwards, but I see how this would work, this policy.
I do see the workload issue as a separate issue, though, a separate but very
No question.
significant problem at the county.
And we all know that. I mean, we've been here a long time.
Yeah, I definitely would want, and that's why we're bringing this here, is to have the committee weigh in and whether they think this is really a feasible good idea or not.
If we passed a cash out only option, you would have even more people banking and using less vacation here already than we have currently. So
That's what I think would happen, is we would actually have lower utilization of vacation, and people would be just essentially taking the cash. So
Would they also, because of the 100% and payout, would they then be taking sick leave instead and utilizing sick leave as vacation, essentially? I'm asking that, not really thinking about that. And I haven't seen your most recent version because I've looked at an old version or something, but I mean, that version is not being paid out at 100%. And so you could think about it as you figure out a way to do sick leave. You have a doctor's note or something that says, yeah, they need a break, and they go to wherever and do what they need to do. And then instead of taking vacation, which they would have normally have done in the past, now they're trying to bank it so they can try to sell it. I mean, that's just be aware that that's also a possibility.
Not for this version, but we have talked about mental wellness and the proper use of sick leave, and how mental wellness isn't clearly spelled out with that, but there has been some discussion with individuals from the health promotion department about changing that policy to include mental wellness, the use of sick leave for that. And to point out as well with this, there is kind of a trade-off. About 80 Utah County employees utilize the convert sick hours, unused sick hours they accrued in the year, to vacation. We are proposing to remove that option because we're trying to do everything we can do to encourage the employee to use vacation time and not to continue to accrue and end up losing vacation time or getting into that situation. We just have originally the cap was at 240.
You're right.
And we talked about with the focus group, we've moved that cap to 300. Do we need to keep moving it up? And moving the cap up won't help the problem. Employees it won't encourage them to use vacation. This mechanism with this additional payout encourages them to utilize vacation, gives them an incentive to cash out high balances of vacation hours as long as they're using it. And then if Jeremy would like to speak to that, you talked about the liability of vacation. In your perception, is it better for the employee to utilize the vacation now and get that paid out now on that liability, or bank it and pay it out with a future liability that would be more valuable down the road?
Yeah, it's the economic incentive is to hold out, because as you get higher wages, it pays out at the higher wage down the road. So that one is just naturally in favor of holding out. And I appreciate the explanation for the reason for this, and I think I was tracking that. And as I'm thinking about it, I hope there's an even better solution out there, but I would definitely, and if we're ready to move on to make a motion to adopt this language and monitor and see how it goes. And if a better solution comes, great. But this idea that you have to take at least 40 hours consecutively to get this does, I think, create a scenario where people are actually taking the time off. So I haven't seen anything better to help solve this solution other than just putting everybody on an hourly rate and paying them overtime.
That's an interesting idea. Yeah, and I'm definitely open to a solution that is more, elegant, if you will. I don't know if this is the best solution. And again, we're just essentially making a recommendation because it still has to be approved by the commission. So that's all we would be doing is making a recommendation. So there still could be, modifications and changes, to this language. So
How much historical data does Wasatch Behavioral Health have to maybe share to see how this has worked?
yeah, I can absolutely get that. I can tell you when I worked there, it was utilized heavily.
Oh, so it's been for a long time
It's
then.
been in place for at least 10 years.
So that might help inform us as to what would happen if this was passed. And-
Yeah, it was again. They didn't. Of course, we don't have anything here like this at all either. So I would hope it would be seen as a positive because again, employees are always asking, "Can I sell back some vacation?" No, you can't. I'm sorry, but there it was seen significantly as a positive. It wasn't seen as a negative. They're like, "Oh, I get to take off vacation and I get money for my vacation." It was
That's true.
it was seen very much as a positive. So that's what
Pay for my vacation.
So I'm hoping it would be seen that way, hoping it's a win for the county as well. And again, if there's another solution, I mean, I can see what you're saying, that there's something about it that feels a little bit, almost, I don't know, heavy-handed in a way. We're almost forcing people to do the right thing. And is that our role? I don't know. So anyway, I can see the issues both ways.
Well,
Okay.
it seems to me that you're given an option that's not currently there. I'm not criticizing
Sure.
the option, so please don't misunderstand.
Yeah.
Now, to clarify, is that in order to take advantage of this sellback, if you will, is it 40 hours they have to take in consecutive?
Correct. So they couldn't just use 8 hours here and say, oh, I want to get another 8 hours paid. It has to be 40 consecutive hours of vacation. And then they have the option to sign a form saying, hey, I would love to get an additional 40 hours paid out. And we would reduce their balance essentially 80 hours.
Is that hour to hour, or is it, so for example, if they take 40 hours of vacation, can they then ask for 80 hours of pay, 80 hours of vacation conversion?
It would,
pay?
if they took 40 hours off of vacation, they could only ask for up to 40 hours.
Okay, so if
to
they
be
ask for, so if
additionally
they do
paid out.
80 hours of vacation in a row, and so take 2 weeks off, then they could ask for up to 80 hours,
Correct.
which is your max.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So essentially, and if somebody took a 2-week vacation, they could drop their balance 160 hours, which does solve some significant vacation balance issues for
Or
a
it's
lot of
half.
people.
And they can't dip below 80.
And you can't be below 80, so you're not getting people drawing it down to 0 that would run into time off issues down the road.
And you raised the other point. So if they take 8 hours, can they get 8 hours, or is that too low to even consider?
Has to be at least
At
40
least 40,
consecutive
okay.
hours for
Thank you.
minimum. And then, so with the way it's written, the only thing that, from what I understand, is that line number 3, there would be no necessary written approval from a department head. We would have them just fill out a basic form that they would provide to HR like they do with sick conversion, and we would be able to do that for them on that pay period.
I think that makes sense. I think obviously the vacation request still needs to be approved by the department head like they always do, right? But the cash request, I don't see why the department head would care.
Yeah, I
Like, it
think-
probably benefits the department in some ways too, because they'll be there, even though it goes against the mental health issue. But
And that also was cited in the analysis report that Deneen provided from the finance. She stated that the use of vacation and the benefit that it is for employee morale, mental health, mental wellness, so that is supported, I think, collectively with all the departments here at Utah County.
Okay, why don't we go on to the next one? And
Okay, PJ, will you go to page 6 of 14? So this is, Utah County has historically had a sick leave conversion component, 2 options. Employees can convert unused sick time that they accrue birthday to birthday. The 2 options are they can convert sick leave to vacation. Every employee accrues 4 hours per pay period if you're full-time, and that means you could accrue up to 104 hours of sick time year to year. Whatever you don't use of sick time that year, you could, by your birthday, convert over to vacation, and it's a 50% conversion ratio. So in other words, you could end up getting, 52 hours of vacation converted if you didn't use any sick time during the year. We're proposing to remove that component because that increases vacation balances. We'd hope that it encourages the employee to utilize vacation, but we think that this first mechanism for additional pay is a really good trade-off for that employees can not only utilize their vacation, but they also can get some additional compensation for their hours. So that's the first part of the proposal, is to remove the sick to vacation option. The second piece is the sick to cash. Originally, you had to maintain a minimum balance of 720 hours of sick time, your just overall accrual, to even utilize the sick to cash option. We're proposing reducing that down to 480 hours, which is more equivalent to 12 weeks, which is also lines up with like FMLA 12-week allotment. So an employee would at least have to have 12 weeks of sick time banked up before they could utilize an option like converting their sick time to cash. And the proposal would be to increase that conversion rate from a 25% up to 50%. So there's a few flexibilities we have with this. We can set the limit as to when they could utilize that benefit and what the rate that we want to pay that out in. As you know, there are some employees that use every drop of sick leave, and they'll probably never be eligible to utilize this benefit. But we do have some employees that rarely use their sick time and have thousands of just in the thousands of sick hours. And they use this because they're like, I'm glad I can at least use my sick time for something. Otherwise, all they look forward to is possibly at a retirement career getting a 25% payout of up to 720 hours. So this allows an option for them to use the unused sick time year to year that they've accrued with a sick to cash. And again, removing the sick to vacation option. So that's up for discussion, whether we do want to remove the sick to vacation option and whether we want to move balances on the sick to cash and the amount that the payout is.
So the amount would be raised from 25% to 50%, correct?
Yes.
On the sick to cash?
Yeah, and originally that was done to try to encourage more employees to cash out their sick rather than to convert it to vacation. But since we're doing away with the sick to vacation option, maybe that's not necessary to do. So that's up for discussion with the Benefits Committee.
Okay, thoughts?
I actually like,
I like it. Go ahead, Yvette.
sorry, Jeremy. I actually like the increase of, at the conversion from 25% to 50%, because a lot of the comments that I've heard from employees, especially in the sheriff's office, is that it feels like it's kind of it's a pittance, considering they've earned that sick leave, and yet when it's cashed out, it's just a fraction. So I like that.
I would agree with Yvette on that. Let me just remind you why the 720 was there. So 720 was to get you to long-term disability. And I think employees need to understand that, because we don't offer short-term disability from the county, that if you're gonna go down to 480 and you're gonna cash out, that you may not have enough hours. I mean, like for me, I'm trying to make sure I have enough hours between vacation and sick to cover if something happened, I get hurt, that I can get to long-term disability without losing any pay. And so, which is 720 hours, as I understand it. So that was the reason the number of 720 was picked originally. It used to be, before you got here, Brandon, it was unlimited, and we had employees who were retiring with 2,000 hours of sick leave balance. But so I mean, I like it. I'm just making sure everybody understands what the 720 came from. Okay. And so, by doing what we're doing, employees might get the first 480. And then there could be a gap between the 480 and the 720 if they're trying to get to long-term disability.
I could look at my math, but I think our long-term disability policy is now at 12 weeks, correct?
Yeah.
Sterling and James?
Oh, has it changed?
Yeah, I was just going to ask the question. I think that used to be the case, but we updated it because
Well, even
Gallagher-
better.
We have a richer benefit.
Let's
on
move
long-term.
past this.
Yeah, Gallagher's so awesome that they helped us reduce that down to 480. And
That's the case.
so
That's even
that-
better.
It's because as you recall, we used to have the donut hole where you would run out of FMLA and you wouldn't have
Right.
a long-term for another 3 months.
Correct.
And we're like, what do you do with these people? So yeah, I think that's what happened.
I'm glad to know that. Thank you.
So that's again where that kind of 480 buttons everything up, so we ensure that the employees have enough time to get from A to B before that would be needed.
I was wondering where that 720 came from.
Where it came from.
Now I learned something new today.
So is there any
Why
discussion?
so did I? I didn't know it was 480 now.
So about removing the sick to vacation conversion, is there any need for discussion on that? Is that supported?
Yes.
Okay,
I think cash is always supported.
And then sick to cash, by reducing that minimum balance, that's going to increase the amount of people eligible to participate in that, not by a significant number, but it will make it more achievable. And then increasing the rate to a 50% payout. Any issues with that?
And that will have, in the first year, that will likely have a year-end budget impact, but
I mean,
we could come up with that number. I'm sure it won't be so big we can't manage it.
you talk about people who use every drop of sick. What about the people who don't? And are stellar. I'm not saying that people who use every drop of sick are not stellar employees, but you have a lot of employees who are there every day and are working hard, and it's nice to give them some benefit.
Excellent. Thank you. So sick leave payout is at the bottom of that page. So when employees leave Utah County and qualify for a URS retirement, regardless of years of service with Utah County, if they have a URS qualifying retirement at their separation, they are eligible to be paid out sick leave up to 720 hours at 25%. So that's currently in the policy. Meeting with the focus group, one thing that we talked about, there was a value of loyalty. Well, what about the employees that spent 20 years in law enforcement or 30 years in public service here? Instead of 25% payout, they asked for an increase. And so the request on that is, if a Utah County employee has spent 20 years in public service here, 20 years public safety, or 30 years public, that rate, instead of 25% payout at retirement, would be 50% on sick leave.
I don't know if I have an opinion on that one. I don't know. What do you think, Jeremy?
I don't really. What are we trying to incentivize?
So it's
I don't feel like there's a clear incentive being drawn there.
Yeah, so that's an excellent question, because in reality, this is something we wouldn't have to do. We're not incentivizing anything because they're leaving, but what it's doing is it's increasing goodwill in the neighborhood, so to speak, because they're, instead of leaving with this, 25% of sick leave payout, they're leaving with a 50%, with their retirement. So again, it's more of enriching what the county's doing for someone who has earned a retirement. That's really what it's doing.
I think it goes to the perspective of the employee, and that is, after dedicating that much time to the county, it is, I believe, a gesture of you're demonstrating that they were valued, that commitment was valued. I think that's what the employees are getting at.
That is what they did brought up. And we did do comparisons with Weber, Salt Lake counties. We are in line with many of them. Some have a little bit richer benefit, where even if you've only been here for 10 years, they do a third payouts versus 25%. Some are exactly like us, but this would be the richest of benefits, but it's specific only to employees that serve all of those years with Utah County. Otherwise, they're only eligible for the regular base, which is 25% of their sick leave, up to 720 hours. So if they have 1,500 hours at the time of retirement, we only pay out up to 720 either way, whether they've been here 30 years or been here 5 years and have a URS eligible retirement.
So if someone has a URS that's split, let's say they work for Orem City, then they come to work here for Utah County Public Works or something, they wouldn't be eligible because all 30 years would have had to have been
They wouldn't be
here.
eligible for that 50% rate, only the 25% rate.
Okay.
And that originally the county policy was changed to actually just accommodate a regular URS retirement for that situation. We had employees in the public sector for a long time that maybe came here and actually did their URS retirement here, but they were eligible for 0 of their sick leave payout.
Okay.
So in those situations, they would still only earn 25%, but it's the employees that have been here the 20 years in public safety and 30 years public. So it does encourage that, marathon to spend most of your career at one public county.
So if the incentive that we're looking for is to get people to stay under our employment for their whole career, that's going to be a pretty small number of people that are affected by this.
Yeah, I would agree.
So if I don't know how much this is talked about. I mean, public safety with the 20 years, I know retirement is a lot more discussed, and I just wonder if the additional 25% is really going to make it that much more attractive. Why not 100%? You know, like make it something that's really makes them lick their chops over. Boy, I got a chance to leave, but I've got this many unused hours, and I can get paid out. You know, it'd be interesting to do an economic analysis to see how many people, you know, on average for the last 10, 15 years have met this, and how much leave they left with, and so we could actually get a sense of what the impact is. But if that's the incentive, is to really give them a reason not to leave and go work for another agency, I don't know that an additional 25% is going to move the dial that much, because they're usually leaving for a pretty good chunk of change. So I'm just saying maybe 25% more isn't really going to move the dial on that.
So
Yvette, what do you think?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say maybe this will help Rob stay.
Yeah, how fast can we change this?
As Jeremy said, I'm leaving for the chunk of change.
So why don't we, put this one on hold, and we'll do a little more analysis on this one.
Okay. Number 4, very simply, currently county policy allows a department head to approve up to, 10 days, 80 hours of leave without pay. We're just proposing that the department head can approve up to 20 days, or basically double worth a month. So they don't have to, if an employee exhausts that 2 weeks, go before the commission requesting additional time. We're giving them just twice as much leeway to grant leave without pay as a department head.
Ralph, how often is this used? Do you know?
Maybe 6-7 times a year.
And you think it'd be an advantage to the department heads to give them another 10 days?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
I'm just curious.
No, it's a good question.
One of the bigger questions is, how often have you gone to the commission asking for an additional week or so of leave without pay that it's been denied?
Never.
Yeah, it's usually 6 months or some
Yeah.
big number.
So it does
a year.
seem, bureaucratic in a way to have that such a low level. I think department heads should have the ability to do more.
Yeah.
So I'm obviously in favor of it. But
And that can be intermittent too, right? It doesn't have to be, okay.
I'd appreciate that. I mean, sometimes these can be devastating cases. They need that extra 10 days, and that worry might not be as extreme if they know that the department head has more leeway there. So, okay.
I think that one's
Okay,
a
so
go.
check on that. Next one is, we have actually got our short-term disability policy to allow us to begin short-term disability after 7 days. The only constraining factor is Utah County policy requires the employee to use all of their paid time off before they go into a leave without pay situation, and short-term disability won't pay $1 until that employee has been impacted financially. So the change in the policy, which, let me make sure I'm going to that here for you, PJ, allows the employee, let's see, I'm just going to make sure I pull that up. It's same policy.
Yeah, same place you were a minute
Right there.
ago.
Yeah, it was in 3. It was the same place you were. So it allows the employee after 7 days, which is the waiting period for short-term disability, to only have to use 40% of their paid time off so that they can begin their short-term disability. And this has already been approved through our short-term disability vendor. James Sterling, is this something that can commonly happen? Employee can use 40% paid time off, short-term disability kicks in after 7 days. So we're not doing anything unorthodox with that. We just ran into situations where employees picked up short-term disability and never got to utilize that benefit because they had paid time off covering them, keeping them whole, when they were kind of paying for this the whole time. And the short-term disability vendor was saying, yeah, that you could have done that, but it's our policy that was preventing them from doing that.
And this short-term disability policy, that's a county policy. It's not the employee purchasing at the benefits fair, the short-term benefits policy, right?
It is something they purchase as a
So
voluntary
it
benefit.
is something we're purchasing, okay.
Yeah, so it's something that happens frequently, is they have paid the money for short-term disability, but they don't get to use the benefit because they
I
have
see.
too much sick time. And so, yeah,
We need to do this, yeah. That
I
makes sense.
think this one's a no-brainer.
So as you see, the language is very clear. If they've elected short-term disability, after 7 days, they can use 40% paid time off, and 60% they would enter and leave without pay. And then, because they would be compensated by the short-term disability plan at 60%. And if, let's suppose something happened and they were denied their short-term disability, we could go back in and make them whole with their paid time off.
I do have one question. Would they be either required or be able to utilize vacation after they've used sick time to make up the 40%?
Well, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would think so too. I just want to clarify that. Is that something we need to have in there to clarify?
Did I say,
Well, you
I think
just
I said
said-
paid time off.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So the next part is the bereavement leave policy, and it's just two simple additions. We did split this up in the last update, actually having a more rich, well, a 40-hour group, which was parent, spouse, and children. We would like to add brother and sister into that 40-hour paid bereavement time group. Right now, the siblings are in the 24-hour group. But one thing is, some people, even if you're a younger employee, maybe you're at home with your siblings and they, 40 hours would be a little bit more appropriate for them to have for bereavement than the 24 hours. So the first change would be just adding the relationship brother and sister to the 40 hours of bereavement leave for immediate family. And then the second part is under the 24-hour, right now it says grandparent, and we're just updating the language to also be grandparent-in-law. We get a lot of questions about my wife's grandparent passed away, am I eligible for bereavement leave? And it was kind of a gray area, so we're just spelling it out since we spell out in-law in all of our other relationships. And that is under the bereavement section, PJ. See if I can find it.
Does anyone have any questions about that one? Does
Page 9
anyone
of
not
14.
like their grandparents? I'm just wondering if that's.
Positive. This is positive. Thank you.
And one of the, just to bring it to your attention, one thing that was been brought up is cousin is not a qualifying relationship for paid bereavement leave. The only, Salt Lake County has a 8-hour cousin policy. That's the only thing we've seen where cousin is brought into paid bereavement leave. Here at the county, we don't have any paid bereavement for cousin, but I think a lot of the other qualifying relationships are appropriate with those hour ranges.
Okay, what's next?
And then last, we just updated some language for holiday pay. The way that it was worded was always a little confusing. We have employees that sometimes starting on a Monday, but Monday was a holiday. That employee is not eligible for holiday pay. Or sometimes we have a holiday like on a Friday and an employee says, hey, I want that to be my last day worked even though I'm not coming in to get paid. So the holiday pay language on the schedule there, let me make sure I find it. All we are saying is that the employee must be in an eligible qualifying work status before the holiday and after the holiday to be eligible for the holiday pay, if that makes sense. And this wording is similar to Salt Lake County, Salt Lake City, the way that they go about doing holiday pay eligibility. We just wanted to clarify it because it wasn't really spelled out very clear with our current language. But that is the intent. So then we can tell a person why they don't get holiday pay for starting on a Tuesday when the holiday's on a Monday. It's easier for us to explain with this type of language.
Does that make sense? Okay.
And then just another addition was D, where it just basically says if an employee has gone at least half of the pay period in a leave without pay status, they are not eligible for holiday pay. And that is not, basically if you're in a leave without pay status, you're not eligible for holiday pay if half of that pay period is not got any compensation in it. And so we're just clarifying that in the policy. It's the way that it's been practiced here at the county, but just never clarified in policy.
Okay, anyone have any questions?
All right. So next we'll move over to the FMLA policy. There's just a couple quick changes on this, and that's policy 5400 FMLA. The first bullet point is intermittent leave for parent bonding. Yes.
Do we know if that one's different than the
It
one?
should probably be the same. It's on page 4 of 6 on the FMLA policy. Essentially, we reserve the right if an employee requests intermittent leave for parent bonding. It does not require physician documentation for that, but all we're noting is in policy that it requires approval from the employee's department head and approval from the HR director for parent bonding reason for intermittent FMLA. If the employee wants continuous leave for parent bonding, that does not need to be approved by the department head or director, but only intermittent leave. And there are situations that come up at the county where we have employees that want the time away, but there's certain events they have to be at work, whether it's in the legal division or in the sheriff's office. There are things that they said, I need to be here at that, and this allows them to have some flexibility to enjoy FMLA time off for parent bonding, but also fulfill work obligations without violating their FMLA entitlement. So very simple wording, just saying that it just requires department head approval and HR director. We're just clarifying that in our language.
Is that less approval than normal for FMLA?
That's actually what we do in practice, is exactly that.
Okay. Under what circumstances would you deny it?
If the, department does not want that employee to come in on a part-time basis while they're on bonding leave, they can actually do that. If they don't have part-time work, has that ever happened? It seems like it's never happened, but they could say no to
Yeah.
the intermittent leave.
And
Sorry,
if-
we don't want to accommodate you on an intermittent basis for bonding.
I mean, the employee could say, well, I would like continuous leave for parent bonding. It's approved. Does not require any approvals. But it's the intermittent leave where we have an issue, because there is an opportunity for abuse within that, although we don't want to have to, see that. But this way, it gives a little bit more control for the department head to say, yes, there's some essential functions, we're okay approving that. The employee usually knows when they need to come in for that, because obviously with parent bonding, they're not out for a medical condition. There's no return to work form that needs to be filled out. They're 100% ready to work. They just may need some flexibility between, caring for a newborn, taking care of them, and fulfilling some work obligations. And so it's really up to the employee's preference. We just want to make sure that we have the control to approve that piece or not, which we have the right to do.
I'd be a little concerned legally. I think if you were going to deny a parent bonding on intermittent, unless you can show there's really a real hardship to your work. I mean, I think you'd have. I think before you do that, if you're going to take that position, you want to consult with legal.
For sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we can hold that one. We also updated in the FMLA policy the short-term disability, since FMLA leave is synonymous with paid time off. Same thing, they may be eligible for short-term disability. So we did put that in, it's on the same page, page 4 of 6, right there in the middle. It's just basically addressing the same thing, that the employee can take 40% of paid time off and then take the other 60% as leave without pay if they qualify for short-term disability after 7 days. And then the last bullet point is FMLA leave without pay, and this is kind of a recent addition, and I can provide examples to explain what we're trying to say. If the employee is on FMLA approved and they take off a scheduled shift for that FMLA reason, we are requiring that employee to utilize their FMLA entitlement. Now, they don't necessarily have to use paid time off to cover that, because maybe they work an overtime shift somewhere else that would make up for those hours. But if they have a scheduled work shift that they take off for their FMLA qualifying reason, we're requiring them to take off their FMLA entitlement, which FMLA doesn't pay you. It's your paid time off that pays you. But we want to account for that 12 weeks of FMLA that they have, and this is one way to do that. What was not known is some employees are able to pick up additional shifts and never report FMLA time off. And from our perspective, when you see it, they're like, oh, they're never taking time off. In fact, they're working overtime. But what's really happening is they are taking full shifts off for an FMLA reason. We just never know about it. And this only would draw down their FMLA entitlement of 12 weeks by doing that.
So
for
we
a scheduled shift.
we have done the research on this, but we will still, of course, run it by Paul to make sure that we're good. But I'm sure you know about this or that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's been a kind of an issue.
So in no way is this punitive to our employees. All it is, it's allowing us to record when that employee is taking off time off of a scheduled shift for that FMLA reason. It's recording that against their FMLA entitlement. Okay, and that's what we have for the FMLA. So any questions on the short-term disability piece, which we approved earlier, I'm guessing,
No.
and the FMLA leave without pay? Any discussion on that?
Nope.
Okay, so we'll just hold point number one. And then last is just some language updates on our group insurance plans, which PJ is policy 5300. And I think we're going down to page 6 of 8, where both of these changes are on it. So really, this is just an addition of language into here. Utah County, the commission has agreed for the URS Tier 2 public safety retirement plans. There was a recent change. They have enhanced that Tier 2 public safety benefit, but as part of that enhancement, they added a 2.59% mandatory employee contribution to help fund that. What's that? Page 6 of 8. Utah County, the commission agreed to pick up that additional 2.59% for URS on behalf of that employee. And this is just language in our policy which indicates that the county is doing that. Under the defined benefit plan, if we do that there, we need to add an additional 2.59% under the defined contribution plan, which is the 401k plan through URS. And again, this is only for Tier 2 public safety employees. And the county is covering that portion of it. They agreed, the commission has agreed to do that. This is just putting it in our policy, so it's understood.
And that's great. Again, that's great. The way it's written, though, it would suggest that, let's say next year they add 6% more. The county would be covering that as well. So maybe you want to tie it to right now, like
The number?
the number or the date or whatever you may want to limit it a little bit so that it's clear that we can reconsider next time they ask for a big number like that.
Okay.
At least the commission would have the option.
What I can do then is where it says the public safety portion, I would specify the number. So if the number increases, the county's still committed to the original portion, and they would have to agree to the additional amount, at what point we could change the policy.
That's good.
And they probably would every time. It's just, you don't want to prejudge it
I see what
until
you're
you see
saying.
the numbers.
Yeah, so we'll just put the fixed number in there as well. And then as you see down into the 401k plan, this just talks about how the Utah county, who's eligible for the 6.2% match
Tier 2.
from the county. Looking through the policy, I think it was important to put that line in that says URS post-retirees rehired after 7/1/2010 are not eligible for the 6.2% county match. And this is URS policy. So we could just refer them to that rather than have it in county policy, but this just helps us spell it out. We've exhausted multiple attempts to try to get a match for our URS post-retirees rehired after this date, and it has not been successful with URS.
And I've been on one of those conversations with URS. This only applies to maybe 6 people, maybe less than that now.
I think it's closer to 20.
Yeah.
Is it 20? Okay.
Yeah.
But I think it would be helpful because it does come up from time to time, and we really have tried to do our best. So
And we'll continue to work on it. If something ever did come through that would allow us to, we could update the policy. So those are the only policy updates that I have. And
well,
any
that was
questions on
enough.
those?
So I think the FMLA ones, the group insurance ones are obvious. I know we were going to hold off on the sick conversion and the leave policy. Do we want to do any more additional conversation about the vacation payout option? Because that one's the one we spent the most time on. Anybody? If not, we can make a motion to make a recommendation to the commission to make these changes as proposed, minus any alterations that we've discussed, which Rob has notes on those, I'm sure.
No, but I saw Brandon was taking notes. So I guess the question was to Brandon, before we make that motion, I appreciate you, Mr. Chair. Now, there was a couple you were going to hold. Is that what I understand? Could you clarify which ones you're planning to hold and not go to the commission with? At
Correct.
this point?
So under leave 500, item number 3 for sick leave payout, that was going to be hold for further discussion and analysis about the 20 to 30 year retirees getting an increase in the sick payout.
Okay.
Policy FMLA 5400, number 1, holding for consulting with legal, just about intermittent leave for parent bonding.
Yeah.
And then the additional pay conversion for the vacation. I have a check on that. It seemed it was favorable, but I didn't know if there was any more discussion that needed to happen on that. Those were the
I
only
think
two I had. to hold.
the first one on FMLA is just, pending, legal review, which would actually apply to all of this, quite frankly.
Right.
You wouldn't give it to the commission until we've had legal review on all of it, so.
Okay.
Anyone want to venture a motion?
I'll make a motion that we recommend to the county commission, subject to legal review, the modifications of (5-300) group insurance plans, 5-400 related to FMLA, and 5-500 related to leave, with the exception of those ones that were pulled off by and referenced by Brandon just a minute ago.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 I didn't hear Jeremy. Jeremy, did you say aye?
I didn't. I'm only getting about every fifth word, so I'm not entirely sure what the motion was, so I'll just abstain if that's all right.
Sure. Motion passes 4-1 abstain. Okay. All right. Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate all the work.
Do you want me to hit the next point on the agenda?
Oh, I think we're gonna hold.
Okay.
So thank you. Thank you for having that
We can
ready.
bring
If
that
you
up.
guys are curious, Brandon did just highlight some of the results on benefits from the engagement survey. He'll go into this more when he meets with each one of you and, your departments. But we've run out of time on this section meeting because it was so awesome. So, okay, I'd like to turn it over now to our broker Gallagher, who's going to talk about our population risk assessment and any other items we need to review, and then we'll move into closed session after that.
While he's taking that, can I ask if whoever's running the equipment, the presenter screen is black for me? Could I be able to see the people sitting in the seats if possible?
It's our computer over here sharing, not being shared quite yet.
You should be able to share. Oh, sorry.
Do we have to join the meeting, or can we just plug in? So I don't know if that's gonna work.
Do you need the information
We might need it, yeah.
to join in?
Probably.
Because last time I don't think we did Zoom, we just threw it up on the screen, so. How much battery do you have? Should we just do the Chads? Booty? Okay.
Alright, so I think I'm connected to the internet. So if I'm connected to this, then I can share without having to go and use
Oh,
this.
is it in there?
Right? Not yet, but I will. If I, let's see here. So where's
I think they're
the,
saying you can't connect to this. You have to join the Zoom meeting.
right, if I join the Zoom meeting, then I just need the invite.
Right.
The Zoom.
What she has right there, as soon as you're on the internet.
Okay, I'm on the internet. Oh, but I need this link, so.
Just go to Zoom.com.
Yeah, yesterday
and
I-
type in the meeting ID.
The internet wasn't working very well yesterday at all. I kept getting,
Jeremy, can you hear me right now?
I can hear you now, yes.
But it's
I haven't heard anything for about 3 minutes.
okay. That was by far the most important part of the meeting, the last 3 minutes. It was like critical, but it'll be okay.
is that when you were talking about the auditor's office?
We were talking about the future of the auditor's office.
Yeah, I thought so.
And how, you're going to be working up there pretty soon.
2643.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out our AV issues. We're getting the AV guys on it.
So Jeremy, do you
Thank
come
you.
the back way or the front way when you come in the office?
I come down I-15.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you waiting for me? Does it say?
Listen.
Oh,
I'm from
okay.
There's a high school. Up there.
8158, password? No, the passcode. 946?
280, I think. Around 280.
No, 8158?
It's a lot bigger now. And they have a second high school up there, Salisbury. No. I'm from Tooele, where Jeremy's at. In fact, yeah, in fact, he's in my brother's graduating class. Yeah, we've been in Orem forever.
No, we'll still.
Jeremy knows some people that I grew up with.
No, but I think they're gonna wanna mute, right? Yeah. They're gonna wanna mute. No, because you're not gonna call in, because you're gonna use your speakers here. So there's no degree.
Let's go continue. Okay.
All right, very good.
And make your mic ring.
There we go.
Perfect.
Excellent. And then I'm going to share.
While he's getting that pulled up, thanks for having us back down. Good to be here. And thanks for splitting up the two meetings. As much as we would have loved yesterday's meeting, grateful to be here today. So we,
You have to speak closer, because Jeremy's not gonna be able to hear you very good.
Can you hear us, Jeremy? Excellent.
So as part of our plan, right, to go through with this committee, the pros and cons of being self-funded versus remaining fully insured within the Select Health Share platform, we want to educate this committee on what those pros and cons look like, so that as the time comes and if you make the recommendation to look at a self-funded plan, you'll know what questions to ask, you'll know what you're looking for, and understand maybe the repercussions that come with that, plus the benefits that come with it. So we thought we'd pick up today where we left off last meeting and talk through some of the self-funded versus fully insured differences. And then as Ralph pointed out, we want to also go into self-funding feasibility, talk about your specific experience data. Does that make sense? Does that not make sense? Then look at your population health currently within Utah County. And what that is we look at really chronic condition or large claimants and where they're trending for the county. Because when you go self-funded, those become now your, I guess obligation is the wrong word, but that's where we're going to focus a lot of our attention. We're going to show you a chart that a very small portion of your population makes up the far majority of your claims cost. And today we rely on Select Health to manage those chronic conditions and those large claimants, right? Whether it's through the share tactics, increasing preventive visits, senior physician, having the physician have an online platform where they can collaborate with a specialist. And if you're not seeing a primary care physician, a specialist refers you in there, getting lab work done on an annual basis. That's all done within that Select Health platform. And when you, as the employees of the county, participate and hit those metrics, then Select Health comes back with a guaranteed renewal increase, which is far below where medical trend is for each of those years. Well, when you come out of that and move into partial self-funding, as we'll talk about here, that blue section in the on the left-hand side is your medical and RX claims. And that's where the real potential is to pick up savings, which we then represent in green. The blue section being less than what you paid in orange and a fully insured premium to Select Health. So how we manage that really dictates if the plan runs well or doesn't run well. Good rule of thumb, I said this last meeting, but I'll bring it up one more time, is a good underwriter / actuary is going to tell you that in 10 years' time, you're going to have 3 bad years on a plan, just luck, 3 good years, and then somewhere in there, you're going to have 4 years that run averages or where we expect. So if you take the 3 good years and the 4 average years, 7 out of 10 years we expect a self-funded plan to run better or equal to a fully insured plan. And there's going to be 3 years in there where even with reinsurances, you're going to run worse than had you been fully insured. I don't know how much detail you want to go into, but today, right, we pay a premium to Select Health, and then they take all the claims. We have no run out, we have no liability outside of our premium that we pay each month. When you go partially self-funded, you now have to pick up on the bottom, you'll see below the fixed cost, an aggregate reinsurance, specific reinsurance, and then administrative costs. Outside of those fixed costs, everything else is variable, including runout. And runout claims is an important thing to talk about. If we canceled our plan with Select Health December 31st, any claim incurred prior to that date would be the responsibility of Select Health to pay. Oftentimes, it takes a claim 2-3 months to be processed through an insurance system. And again, that would still be Select Health's claim. When you're partially self-funded, you own those claims. So even when you cancel your contract or you decide to step away, you still have what's called a runout or lag of claims that you have to pick up. The reason I bring that up, when you move from fully insured to self-funded, you have a nice moment where your claims are totally paid for on the runout by your fully insured carrier, but then the run-in, it takes a minute for your claims to mature, right? Everyone gets a new ID card. They have to get used to a new network. Or is my doctor still in this network? How do I use this? And so there's a rush to get a lot of claims filled before the change occurs. And then usually 2.5 months to ramp up to normal claims. Well, if you make the decision to move back into fully insured, it's a two-edged sword. Now you have your run out from your self-funded claims, plus you're paying the higher fully insured premiums day one. Does that make sense? The only reason I bring that up is a lot of consultants in our industry will show you the financials that, hey, it makes a lot of sense to move to self-funding. And it does that first year, but really, and this is why we bring Chad, right, the brains of the operation, you have to almost earmark what is our run out going to be in case we ever terminate this contract down the road, because that tail will be with you at some point. So what you pick up at the front end, you will pay back on the tail end.
And when it comes to some of these items that are in their fixed costs, see at that bottom area, aggregate reinsurance. What does that mean? Well, aggregate reinsurance, it's like we recreate a fully insured plan here, such that if everything, we had horrible claims all throughout. It's funny, before COVID, we're like, if everybody got hit with something, then you would pay no more than this. Well, everybody almost did get hit with something, right? And we had our COVID, but there was a lot of suppressed claims during COVID. So those during self-funded plan, they really made out like bandits, right? But those in fully insured plans, you were paying the fully insured premium, and there was it didn't matter that doctor's offices were closed. But in the flip side, if everybody was going to the doctor's office, you'd have that protection under a fully insured plan. But under self-funding, there is what we call, it's like 25% above what our expected claims are. So in that black line at the very top, fully insured cost, that's what we expect claims are going to be, but your exposure then goes up 25%. What makes it so that it's not more than 25% is that aggregate reinsurance that you're paying for. So that's aggregate of all the claims in the county. Now we go a little bit more granular and we say, well, we don't want to pay for that $1 million claim here, or in some cases now we've had some 2 million. We had another group that had 2.4 million. I had one case that was a $10 million burn victim claim that hit in 1 year, and it was ugly Fortunately, they were fully insured, so we didn't have to worry about stop loss and such. But regardless, specific reinsurance is what we pay for those really massive claims. And what we do is we really decide what is our level of risk that we're willing to tolerate. So that is the portion of premium that we're paying for, and that amount is like, that's the one aspect of a self-funded plan that is fully insured. That reinsurance is a fully insured product, so that's why we call it partially self-funded, because you're not fully on the hook for absolutely every claim. It's those underneath what your risk threshold is. Any questions at that point? Okay. All right, so then when we get to self-funding, what are the advantages? Well, the advantage to the county is that you have more cash flow coming through, especially on the first months of the self-funded plan. But then the disadvantage, right, is that you may not like how high the claims go certain months. So we have kind of both the two-edged sword, but you do have a little bit more control over your plan. I know in the past when we've talked about, hey, we want to be able to have a few more providers in our network. Well, under a self-funded plan, sometimes we can do that. And so the control is more on your side of things. If we want to say this is going to be a 10% coinsurance on just this benefit, and everything else will be 20% because we want to incentivize for this. There's many different flexible items on this.
When you move into the partial self-funding arrangement, right, today we're limited by Select Health Share Network. And I know over the years there's been concerns about, is the network big enough for the Utah County population, especially down south? There's been some holes in the share network, and we've tried to patch that up with Med being offered down there. When you go partially self-funded, you're going to now have the advantage of picking pretty much whatever network that you want. So if it's Intermountain Healthcare that you like, if it's HCA, Mountain Star Hospitals, University of Utah, we can choose amongst different networks. So going back to, I guess, that last slide, you're going to have an a la carte moment where instead of going big box, Select Health, they want you to fit in this box, we're going to choose our TPA. So who's going to be the name on the insurance card that our employees see? Well, there's a whole bunch of TPAs out there. What's going to be the network that TPA administers? We get to choose again. And there's different networks have different discounts, and some are bigger, some are smaller. The smaller ones tend to have a deeper discount. So when you go in, you may see a 50% discount versus a 40% discount. That matters to the county as a whole. It also matters to the employee who's paying a deductible or coinsurance on each claim. So there's a lot of factors in there. Then, as Sterling talked about all the reinsurances, right? We then go pick that out of a pot. That's what you think of now core medical insurance. You scoot that over, and you're going to have now wellness, right? You have a really robust wellness program through Select Health Share. How would we want to replace that? There's a lot of options out there. There's a lot of self-funded groups that Sterling and I and Chad manage that have done a fantastic job, and they're all slightly different because now you get to customize and make it the Utah County wellness program. How do we want to incent, as Sterling pointed out? Do we want to drive membership more into telemedicine, primary care? Do we want to have a benefit specialized for mental health benefits? You talked about that in your last presentation.
And I'll just pause here for a second. The SHARE program is unique in how they pay doctors, because they don't pay doctors always for a fee for service, although that is part of the equation. But they also incent doctors to ensure that they are reaching out to patients as well if they haven't had their annual physical. So they are remunerated in a way that self-funded plans, we just don't have the capacity to do that. And so there's a difference there in the risk reward that self-funding has, but what SHARE has built into that whole system at Intermountain.
Oops, sorry, Jeremy, that was loud for you.
Hopefully there we go. All right, so we've already talked about some of the financial considerations, and this would be in and of itself probably a meeting on how you would have to set this up, which that's probably a little bit more detailed than this general overview conversation. We'd want to make sure that you understand how we would set up that bank account and all of that. We'd be paying the claims as they're incurred. But what we would do is we would affix a rate just like your fully insured plan is today. And so the employee wouldn't really feel a difference when it comes to a self-funded plan versus fully insured. To them, it'll be the same. They pay the same premium that they did. And on the back end, it's all of the finance that the county would consider on the back end.
One additional comment I make on the financial side. So when Utah County first made the move from, I believe it was from PHP to Select Health, right? When that move was made, the plan was not, you were not a healthy group from a medical insurer standpoint. Today, we call medical inflation, Chad.
Well, depends
Our
on the
actuaries say
carrier,
it's 6%, Select Health saying it's
but 10.
10%, and that's what Intermountain's seeing a 10% increase in their charge master in the last year. So the real inflation is probably nationwide more like 6%. We are seeing local effects a little bit higher.
And so what was unique about Share is even for our fully insured or our partial self-funded large clients, think of multi-thousand employers here in the state of Utah and outside, they're getting a 6% medical trend, probably more like a 9% pharmacy trend. You blend those two together, you're probably 6.87% total. That's CPI medical. So partial self-funding does not all of a sudden just fix, your claims are still your claims and they're still going up. Chad just pointed out Intermountain Healthcare just gave every one of their payers, Select Health included, a 10% increase January 1st. So you go to the emergency room, it was $1,000, now it's $1,100 this year, 2023. That was just across the board, Intermountain Healthcare gave out. Well, that all goes into this medical inflation. Within Select Health Share, right back in the day, they said, hey, we think we can fix medical inflation. Instead of inflation going up at 6-7%, we believe that if you, the employees, you, the employer, and you, the physicians, all participate in this three-pronged approach, we can bring down inflation to 4%, which was your first guaranteed contract, right? If you hit all your metrics, you get a 4%, which was pretty unheard of back in the day, to get a 4% increase guaranteed. You can budget on it. As long as Brandon and Stacy are getting the numbers in, which they always do, 4%. After that first 3-year term, then it dropped down to 2%. So even more unheard of that a fully insured product would have an inflationary trend of 2%. Beat all of our partial self-funded clients. Now, again, remember, in 10 years, you're going to have 3 really good years. So for partial self-funded clients, in those 3 really good years, and Sterling alluded to during COVID, no one went to get services, that was a winter year. Same for the county. We have some of your data. During COVID, you would have been better off partial self-funded because you would have seen a depression in claims. But for every group, by 2022, that has slingshotted back up, right? As outpatient procedures start happening again. So financial considerations, Select Health is unique with this Share product, and there's nothing else like it in the country. They have managed to keep claims low now for plus 6 years. This is the first year where Select Health has now come and said, we reserve the right to re-rate the groups at the end of their 3-year contract. That's what's interesting is there's maybe showing some signs of not fracture, but some stress on the Share model. And I think in large part that is Intermountain Healthcare giving out a 10% increase to every payer. So Share is also included in that increase. If they're taking a 10% facility increase, how can they keep their renewal to you lower? So something that we're watching closely.
Yeah, in fact, we recently had another city that was looking at the Share group. They're about the same size as the county. And they were told that the Share increase for 2023 in July was going to be 5.8 or 5.9. So that's what new 3-year commitments are. And so it brings the question, well, what is our break even? What is going to be the best for a 3-year period? Does that still sound good compared to other things that we have in the future? They will change that every 6 months, what that guaranteed rate is. So of course we still have, some time, about a year from now, we'll know what your, exit is going to look like if you chose to exit or stay in the program. We'll have that kind of decision-making ability.
Any questions?
Yes, so if that's the case, and Select Share has been a unique program with a uniquely low rate every year, and it's coming up again in 2024 for I guess renewal, if you will. It seems to me that a self-funded model might need to know that number, because if it's 2% or 4%, that's probably still a pretty good rate, and self-funding is not going to probably beat that. It might. We don't know that. But what it almost seems like to me is that the county ought to proceed on a dual basis. One, prepare for self-funding, because it takes longer to prepare for self-funding, I would assume, because you're going to have to prepare yourself for that. But also be wise to look at that rate as it comes in, and if it's at 4%, you might lock back in at that rate.
Right.
So our recommendation would be just that, is put the county plan out to bid, and Chad is able to pinpoint based off of historical data how we would expect you to run moving forward. Of course, we have no crystal ball to know for sure how you're going to run going forward, but looking over the last 3 or 4 years, we'll be able to put together a pretty good idea. And then with the reinsurances that Sterling talked about, we'll know your guardrails, right? Your fixed cost is the lowest amount you're going to pay, and then your high cost is that aggregate insurance, the top of that red bar that we showed. So where will fully insured fall into that? And then Chad can take your data and he'll run it through a Monte Carlo simulation 10,000 times and say, where's the most prevalent likelihood of where Utah County will run in the next year? Is that a win? Is it a loss? And then we'll be able to present that to you and say, here's your guaranteed rate with Select Health. I'm sure self-funding, they'll have a minimum that'll be below that and a maximum that'll be above that. And it'll just be, what's the risk and reward to implement to change that over? And a large part will be what Select Health rolls out, right? If Utah County is running well, they may still give you a 2%. This group was not, and so they put it almost at 6%.
Well, actually, this one was a brand new group. So they said any new group coming in would be that. That would be our baseline. So, but they update it every year. So it's just really going to depend on how the forecast looks in their overall healthcare system, if they can give anything lower than what that 5.8.
But even at 6%, I mean, I've been here when the county had numbers come in at 22 and 24%. And that's been difficult years when we had to try to negotiate. And that usually meant a modification of our benefits. It meant a lot of pain for employees, quite frankly, and HR staff who had to manage all that and take all the calls. So those are kind of the things that I agree with you. I think that's going to be the key here is what is Select Health going to come back with the number?
Yeah, and the thing that goes into self-funding, you know, I know last time we talked a bit about pharmacy, and pharmacy, how that's a big component of your spend, but it's not the biggest component of your spend. It's a portion, an important portion. And so if we look at that aspect and say, how much drug savings could we get by going self-funding? Well, there's going to be a few different components. And by the way, this is a very moving target right now. In that pharmacy manufacturers, drug manufacturers, have been seeing some of the gimmicks that are going on in the marketplace. And we're going to show you a few of those things and how it relates to Utah County. But we know that there are drug rebates that come back to any group if you're self-funded. Anywhere between 25 to pretty pushing it would be 35%. But if you did get even up that high, yes, that goes into your claims and you get to lower your costs. And of course, that helps quite a bit. And then hopefully you get lower costs overall. We think you could expect about 30%. That's pretty, we typically say 25, but we're gonna push and say, let's say it's 30. What would that look like when it comes to Utah County? Well, there are other aspects that are sourcing drugs for specialty drugs. Have you all heard about Humira? And they're the #1 drug out there. And there were drug manufacturers offering, the one that offered the drug manufacturer assistance is called patient assistance programs out there. And what they would do, drug manufacturers would, in essence, or I should say PBMs, I'm going to use that word PBM, pharmacy benefit managers. When you're self-funded, you can choose who you want to dispense all of these drugs and manage your costs. Well, these programs were excluding it, and it still exists. So you exclude the drug from your benefit program because Humira is about $6,000 per fill. Say, you know, there's patient assistance programs out there. And what they can do is backdoor it. If it's excluded on a medical plan through an employer, then this member that's taking Humira can go in the back door and say, hey, my plan doesn't cover it, so I need to have you pay for it through your charitable dollars. And so these charitable dollars exist so when they can come in front of Congress and say, hey, you know what, we do so much charitable care and we provide these, and it's a significant write-off for them of charitable services for the population that can't afford their drug. So anyway, they get that drug for free. Companies don't have to spend a dime for it, and they're still getting that drug at no cost. So these are called patient assistance programs. It's not just for Humira, but for several other drugs that are out there. Well, we have seen significant savings over the years on these, but the maker of Humira just wisened up and said that will not exist anymore because mainstream companies are excluding it. And Johnson & Johnson just started doing this recently, saying, hey, that's not going to exist with our drugs. And so anyway, this will probably still exist. But what we did is we looked at an example here. And this is an organization that helps with prescription spend and patient assistance programs. And if we were to look and say, hey, this organization projects a savings of $1 million for Utah County, just looking at your drug spend.
So we took 2022 drug spend and ran it through their model, and they projected that of your current spend, you would save 1.06 million had you been self-funded using this prescription drug program.
Now, this was run before they made that statement about Humira, that we're not going to be allowing this, and the Johnson & Johnson one that just came out recently. But there are several different aspects. They think they can save money on ingredient costs slightly, maybe about $100,000 there on that top line. Dispensing fee is a little bit more expensive, not much. They have a higher admin fee than what it is through Select Health. But then the big one is rebates. You know, they think they can give you a lot higher of a rebates and then what the member pays. There's patient assistance program where they see big savings here in the patient assistance programs on the Access Plus section where they say, hey, through these programs, we can save you $817,000.
What's important to note is this is just one of many examples, right? So don't focus so much on the name. This is just one that we plugged in to give you an example. There are many that have popped up that do just this. I think when you have the decision in front of you this time next year, we will know a lot more about where the future of these types of prescription drug programs are going to be. To Sterling's point, AbbVie, Johnson & Johnson have all started making changes there, so it may drop out some of these savings, but there'll be a new model that shows up, I think. Capitalism will prevail, and they'll figure out another way to take advantage of this, including international sourcing, which we see with some companies. So maybe we'll leave that there. Any questions specific to this? And then we're going to have some specific data to go through. I think maybe we're going to end the public section of it because we're going to go into some health data that maybe you don't want to show to have recorded anyway.
Yeah, so we can move it into closed session. I'm not sure exactly how to make that happen. Yeah.
Yes, I hereby move that we go into closed session to discuss the professional competence and other personal information of individuals at this date, this time, this place.
Okay, I have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. 5-0. So I want to make sure, Jeremy's still on Zoom, but there's nobody else.
Yes.